we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Mario Viviani, and I am part of the developer relations team in Amazon Devices. And I'm really happy to be here once again on our Twitch and YouTube live stream for the FireSide chat. And as usual, I am super pleased to be here with my colleague Anisha. Anisha, take it away. You are on mute, Anisha.
Great way to start a stream, isn't it? Hey guys, so I'm Anisha. I'm also a developer evangelist here at Amazon with a specialty in apps and games. And today we have a really exciting session for you. But before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We want to make sure you guys all use the chat to engage. And if you have any questions, please drop them through and we will do our best to answer. Secondly, we will be live here every Tuesday at 6 o'clock or 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Timing. So don't forget to, subscribe and make sure you join our streams at 6 o'clock. A little rules for the chat. Just make sure you are respectful. Use respectful language. We want you to engage, but, make sure you mind the other people in the chat. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy today's session. Set up those reminders so you can join us every Tuesday. So today we have a super exciting topic. Last week we talked about designing apps for Amazon Appstore with Fire TV versus Fire Tablet in mind. Today we're going to be talking about developing those same apps with Fire TV versus Fire Tablet and the kind of technicalities that you would have to consider when developing for Fire TV. So in today's session, we've got two really cool sample apps that we want to show you. The first one is a touch or D-pad navigation sample app. And then we will jump into our Fire App Builder, which lets you develop a Fire TV app in less than 5 minutes. So let's jump right in then, should we? So the first...
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the first one that we wanted to show you was the touch, or as I said, D-pad navigation sample app. And this is really cool because what it does is shows you the intricacies of how you can add touch to your Fire TV app, but also like best practices and styles of working with the D-pad navigation and remote. So if you are building a Fire TV app, it is good practice to implement navigation and interaction with the remote control. And this can be achieved in many ways, but the key concept is to map those controls and movement and interactions inside your apps to the D-pad and buttons on the Fire TV remote. But with Fire TV Automotive, it is now important to add those touch interactions to your Fire TV app on top of the D-pad navigation. And if you don't know about Fire TV Auto, it was announced last year, and it's bringing Fire TV to your vehicles. So we've pioneered with Jeep, and this is bringing that Fire TV experience outside your living room for the first time. So customers will now be able to use remote control and touch on these devices. So this sample Android app shows you how to build the main UI of a Fire TV app in order to support both D-pad remote controls and touch interactions. And I mean, it sounds really exciting. So why don't we jump right into the actual code? And I'll pass it over to Mario to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anisha. And before we jump in Android Studio and we navigate through the sample application, I wanted to share the link to GitHub, because this is an open source project that we have released on GitHub. You can just clone it and open it in Android Studio, and it will work out of the box. And the demonstration that we're going to do today is we will look into different parts of the implementation, and mainly we will look at how you can build an implementation of a Fire TV UI in the right way, that it works both with, like Anisha said, with the remote, so with directional navigation, but also that it now includes touch. So, go on GitHub. Here's the link, is github.com/Amazon/Fire TV sample touch app. And also Anisha, if you can share the link in the chat as I open Android Studio, it would be great. So you guys can just go give it a star if you can, or just clone the project, and it's a great starting point when you are learning on how to build an efficient application. So I'll stop sharing the GitHub page, and we can actually jump into Android Studio. So give me 1 second to share my screen, and we will go into Android Studio. Hopefully you can see this. Anisha, give me a confirmation if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Brilliant. All right. So yes.
I was just going to say, I mean, if you can't see clearly, let us know in the chat and we can make it full screen. Just drop us a message.
Yes, I think we can actually probably jump into the full screen mode. It's probably the best view for this. So I will actually remove the top banners as well, so you can see everything very clearly. All right. So there are actually a few things to say before we jump straight in and look at the code. It is important when we are building a Fire TV application to build an app in a way that it is actually scalable and dynamic. And when I say this is because in particular, when we're thinking about TV, most of the time, if you're building a media or an entertainment application, you will need to have to deal with dynamic content. And this dynamic content will need to then still follow the rules of navigation that you will find for an app that has to use a remote. So every component of our application, even if it's a dynamic component, will need to declare what are the navigational components of the application in a way that the app can be actually navigated by your customers when they use the remote control. And if you've seen last week's presentation, you will remember that when it comes to Fire TV, the remote control that we're talking about is actually a remote control that has 4 buttons, up, down, left, right, and then a click button. So our app navigation also needs to follow those rules, needs to follow the rule of directional navigation. So let's jump into the project. As you can see, it's a very basic Java-based Android project. And here we'll be dealing with just standard XML declared layouts. I know that Android development is getting more modern, and we have things like Compose as well that now allows us to create a dynamic UIs. But the core concepts that we will see today are definitely applicable across the board to XML-based layouts, but also if you're declaring your layout using something more programmatic like Compose. So let's jump into the layout itself. So I want to show you how we structure this sample, because this is, I would say, the core of what a basic main UI of a TV application, of a media and entertainment application will look like. So if you think about most of the apps that you will find on your TV, you usually have 2 components. You have a lateral component or a menu component. It's usually on the left-hand side, can be on the right-hand side, can be on top. But usually you have a set of menus or categories that you can use to navigate the interface. It could contain, let's say, for example, one could say movies, and the other, the following row might say TV series, like next up. But the core concept is that you will have a menu layout, and then you will have your rows of content. So let's see how this has been implemented. So first of all, we have just a normal linear layout overall that defines as the main container, and then we have basically 2 separate layouts. We have a linear layout that contains a so-called menu layout that is here on the left, here in black. which contains itself actually just one recycler view. And we'll talk about the recycler view in a bit and why is the recycler view important, which is actually the component that will dynamically showcase the rows of the menu. So in this case, we're using a dynamic component which will need an adapter that will show specific rows of menu items here. And at the same time, we have then on the right another container, which in this case is a scroll view. And why are we using a scroll view? Because in this case, we might have actually more rows of content that you dynamically add. In this case, we just decided for simplicity, we decided to add a set of recycler views that are stacked one over the other. There is the first, the second recycler view, the third recycler view, and the fourth recycler view, which you cannot see in the layout because it's down here and it's hidden. And why have we done that? First of all, we acknowledge that this is just a basic UI where usually you might want to add your dynamic recycler view one after the other, and depending on what content you're fetching. But this was just to demonstrate at a very basic level and in form of a sample how you would go about building those stackable dynamic components. So let's start talking about what will these components contain and why do we need to start thinking about the navigational UI even as we are defining the basic XML. So as I said before, there is a specific way in which the navigation happens on a TV application. That is using the D-pad controls. That means that we have to define inside our application the focus. We need to talk about the focus of the app and what is actually going to be made in focus and what is going to be made in focus next. So let's look at what this recycler view will actually contain. So they will actually contain two very simple layouts, which in their own way, they will define the navigational experience. So there are two additional layouts that will be loaded. The first one is called the menu layout, which is a very, very basic constraint layout, which contains a text view. And this might sound trivial, and it is, but what are the key and most important aspects of this component? And the main aspects, and Anisha will also talk about focus later on, is those two lines here. There is Android focusable and Android focusable in touch mode. And what does this mean? It means that it declares that this component can be focused by the UI. And also, we are also declaring focusable in touch mode. That is, we're also saying that if we are experiencing this not from a D-pad perspective, but from a touch interaction perspective, this component can also be focusable. And then we will have another layout, which is very similar in terms of concepts. We have another constraint layout that contains a text view and an image view. And even those, we will need to attach the focusable tags to these layouts. And we will see in a second why, Anisha will explain why are we using focusable in this specific context. However, let's jump back into our core layout out here, and let's look at the recycler view specifically, those components that will contain all the view cards for our content. Basically, here is where we will show all the movies. These components are actually they need to be linked to each other, because let's think about how you will need to move from one content to the other, you will move horizontally between all the movies, but you will also move between one row and the next row. So you want to move from this recycler view here to the next recycler view here. So you want to switch, you want to be able to declare in your UI what is the next focusable component when it comes to the different rows. And here is why we are actually using these tags, which are standard tags in Android, which is next focus down. It's called next focus down. Next focus down is very clear what it does. It's very easy. It says that the next item that is focusable by the UI is going to be the one with this specific ID, which is in this case Recyclerview. That means that when we're pressing the down button to move from the first layout to the second layout, from the first Recyclerview to the next one, this is what is going to happen. So I'll give you a demonstration of what that looks like in our application. So let me actually switch and move from this view to previewing actually previewing what it looks like on the emulator. So another clarification here, you will run this application most likely on a test device, which is most likely going to be a Fire TV device. However, when it comes to these samples that we created, both the touch sample and D-pad navigation sample that we're looking at right now, and the Fire TV fab template, the Fire App Builder, both you can run on an emulator. And in order to do that, you need to set up your emulator in Android Studio to Android TV, and you need to run an emulator for version. It needs to be running Marshmallow or above. So, for example, right now I'm using an emulator that is on API 28. So let me show you what does that look like. Let me share my screen. And here we go. So here is the application running on the emulator. And as you can see here, we have two components. On the left, we have the menu, which contains, in our case, the categories. And on the right, we have the other recycler views that contain each one a row of content. So when you look at this, it already kind of looks like the basic UI of pretty much most of the TV applications that are out there, right? So already, if I am moving from one recycler view to the other, I can do that because, as we said, we declared as focusable as that the next item that is focusable, we declare that the next recycler view is the one that we want to focus on. So when I move using the D-pad control, in this case, I'm just using the up, down, left, right buttons on my PC. You will see that it actually moves around between the different recycler views, and that is exactly what we wanted to achieve. However, we can actually go deeper into this. So we can look at other aspects of the implementation. And we already talked about focusable and focusable in touch mode. And what does this mean? Let me show you what it looks like when we actually jump a little bit deeper into the actual Java implementation. So what we want to achieve is not only that we can move between these different recycler views, but also that we can move horizontally as well. That we want to be able to move between the different components of our rows, right? So how do we do that? So let me get back to Android Studio and show you how we implement that. Meanwhile, as I switch, let me know, Anisha, if there is any question in the comments.
Yep,
but
definitely.
it doesn't look like. And guys,
Not so
if something's not clear, please put a question in the comments and try to jump straight in. So let me actually go back and share my Android Studio. So as we've just seen how we do and implement the focusability between the different major components of the UI. But how can you actually define if your UI is dynamic? How can you, within a dynamic UI, define what is the next focusable item? So there are a few things that you have to do. First of all, and most importantly, you have to declare this as part of your UI, and you have to add one tag that, as you can see, is present in all the components, which is called descendant focusability. And descendant focusability, as the highlighter here says, it defines the relationship between the view group and its descendants when it's looking for a view to take focus. So in this case, it says that the focusability overall should happen after focusability is given to the descendants. So in a few words, very simply, if you add this tag to your Recyclerview, it will automatically allow all the views that are generated by the Recyclerview to be focusable by their own right. So that means that we can actually move from one component to the next when we are moving horizontally as well in the Recyclerview on the right, or when we are actually navigating through the menu on the left. So now you will ask me, okay, how do I actually go and build this dynamic UI that you were talking about? So, and here is when we actually go back to talk about the Recyclerview. So why is Recyclerview important? The Recyclerview components allows dynamic content to be parsed from an adapter. So in that sense, Recyclerview is a great and efficient way to implement your UI, because you define the main UI of the component inside the adapter, and then it's up to the adapter to showcase all that content inside the Recyclerview. So we need to make sure, as I said before, that the UI that the Recyclerview is generating is actually navigable. And we do that by making sure that we declare that all the descendants of the Recyclerview are focusable. And we do that through the tag that I just talked about. So now let's go and take a look at what the actual implementation of the Recyclerview looks like. So I will jump in and start looking at the Java code itself. So in this case, we only have one main activity that contains everything, and we just created two data sets of content. So in this case, this is just hard-coded. We're not fetching anything from the cloud. We don't have a backend for this application, which you might have. So of course, you will need to fetch that information before or as you populate the interface, and that can be part of your, of how you implement your loading system. We're not going to get into the details of like how lazy loading works, and that is kind of outside the scope of today's presentation, which is to focus on building a solid, scalable, and navigable UI. So the main component of the UI are those Recyclerviews. So we have actually the menu, which is a Recyclerview that we have defined. As you remember, this is the Recyclerview here on the left, which is called Recyclerview menu. And then, so what we need to do is to set a layout manager, set a menu adapter, which we are going to go into in a second, and set the adapter. So basically, these two lines here, they instantiate the adapter, which is the component that actually defines the UI itself that needs to be fetched in this specific Recyclerview. And then we just set the adapter to the Recyclerview itself. So at this stage, we have set let's say the left-hand side the left-hand side of our layout, this black menu layout we have defined. And the next step is actually to set up the actual rows of content. So in this case, we are going to use set up all the different recycler views, which are these 4 recycler views, and then set a what we call a row adapter, which we will see in a second. And the row adapter is literally what it fetches all the movies and all the rows of content and populates these rows. So if we go back to these components, is the more right-hand side of the UI, where you have the 4 different recycler views. So I will stop here. Anisha, is there any question, or I don't know if you have any additional comments before I jump in and talk about the adapters?
No questions. I think great. I think you're explaining it great. So no comments from me. I'll let you continue your train of thought.
Great. Awesome. So let's jump into the adapters themselves and look what those look like. So I will actually start from the menu items adapter. And those 2 adapters, the menu adapter and the row adapter, they actually work in tandem, and they work very similarly. Like they are built in a very similar way. There is a data set for all of them. And then the recycler view, it follows a very common Android design pattern, which is the Viewholder pattern. So the Viewholder pattern is a very efficient loading mechanism that allow to fetch content dynamically and display dynamically as well, without wasting too much memory and resources for the system. So it will only display the content is necessary to be displayed in that specific moment. And that is the reason why this is part of the adapter itself. The adapter defines what content is displayed by the recycler view. It's called recycler view because technically it recycles views. It doesn't waste memory and resources. So in this case, the Viewholder itself has 2 components. Is the text view that actually displays the text, and then there is the layout itself. And why are we talking about the layout itself? Well, Anisha will talk about it in a bit when we talk about the listener, but let me just tell you that this component, the layout itself, is actually the most important component when it comes to defining a scalable UI that your users will be able to interact with. So we have 2 components, the text view and the menu constraint layout, which literally is the background of the text view. If we look at the menu layout, this constraint layout is this entire black bar that you see here on top, is the background of our text view. Is in the back respective to the text view to better define. And then what do we do with the adapter? We basically, there is a method, a callback called onCreateViewholder, which is called when the viewholder is actually created, and it inflates the viewholder using what? Using our menu layout. It says inflate using menu layout, which is this layout here. So for every component of this recycler view, this is the layout that is going to be used in populating the UI. And finally, when it comes to binding the onViewholder, on-bind viewholder, which is that when it actually replaces the content of a view and which is invoked by the layout manager, this is actually where the magic happens. And also, this is when I pass over to Anisha, because Anisha is going to talk about the on-click listener that we see here and why is that important. So Anisha. please enlighten
Sure.
us.
So, I mean, usually we never think about touch on Fire TV. We haven't had to up until this point. But lucky for us, Android was built for touch in mind. So, to add click actions to our application's UI, we can use just standard Android components, which will allow us to cover both the D-pad interactions and those new touch interactions that we have to think about. And the best and easiest way to implement these click actions or touch actions on a view is to use the standard Android on-click listener, like Mario said. So on-click listener allows both the touch clicks and D-pad button clicks to be performed on a view. The on-click listener triggers a method called onClick. So Mario, I think you can just point it out in the code, where you can then execute any desired operation. However, we should note that if you have implemented the click action on your remote or D-pad in any other way, you might need to still add this on-click listener on top of any of those custom implementations you might have. And this is just to make sure that the D-pad clicks and touch clicks both execute the desired operations. So while on the D-pad style navigation, the size of those views was not important, it is very relevant for touch. And this is what Mario was talking about, where the layout is really important. And when we look at touch, it's better to use larger views and areas to provide a better user experience. So we want to use the entire large view. So in our application, we applied the on-click listener to the layout itself and not to the views inside the layout to make sure that we have that larger view of the UI. And this could have also been achieved by expanding the internal views to fill the entire layout and apply the on-click listener to the individual views like text view or image view. However, applying it to the entire layout is a simple solution that allows us to fulfill our goal and doesn't require us to change the look and the feel of the UI at all. So the views are dynamic and recreated by the Recyclerviews. So we need to apply individual on-click listeners to each one of the created elements of each Recyclerview. And we do this by modifying the code for the Recyclerview adapters, getting a reference to the layout of each individual item of those Recyclerviews, and applying the on-click listener in the onBind Viewholder method of the adapter.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anisha. And I think that the best way to demonstrate everything that Anisha said is actually to see it in action. So let me switch back to the emulator. So I will show you what did we mean when we were talking about the areas of interaction. So let me stop sharing the screen and let me come back and let me share the emulator. So when we are looking at the UI, like Anisha said, we have two types of interactions that we have to think about. We have the D-pad movement, in which case, like I am emulating right now, I'm moving, up and down, left and right. And then, as you can see, the dynamic UI is automatically now propagated to all the children views inside the rows. And this, as Anisha said, we could apply the click listener to any of these components. Right now, I am just clicking like a customer would do with their remote control when they would click the central button. And in this case, it wouldn't matter if we were just building for a remote. It wouldn't matter what are we clicking on. Like Anisha said, we could be clicking. We could apply the click listener to the view, to the text view. We could apply the click listener to we could apply the click listener to the text. It wouldn't matter because what it matters is where are we with our remote navigation, up and down, left, right navigation. However, let's think about this scenario where touch interaction is involved. Let's say you're using a Fire TV in a car, and you want to touch on the touch screen. You want to interact with one of these buttons. So if the area of interaction was just this very small text, if the customer is not clicking exactly on the text, it will be difficult to interact. There will be a small area of interaction. So it is actually much better to give the entire view the click listener to apply to the entire background layout. So in this case, it doesn't matter using my mouse. I use my mouse to simulate the touch interaction. It's actually a great way to test if your app is touch enabled. You can use the emulator and mouse, and it's a great way to emulate touch. It doesn't matter where I'm clicking. As you can see, I'm clicking in different parts of the UI because the entire layout itself is clickable. It doesn't matter if I'm clicking on the image or if I'm clicking on the text. Everything is clickable, and the same applies to both adapters, both to the TV adapter and to the row adapter and to each row. And also, it doesn't matter if I'm doing the same thing here on the menu layout as well. As you can see, this is a great advantage because already TV UIs allow for very large interfaces. They tend to leverage as maximum as possible of the real estate on screen. So the fact that the touch interaction area is big, it's actually working in our advantage because it's then much easier for the customer to click on a specific component. So this kind of overall wraps up the UI. The other thing that I wanted to make you notice, talking about focus, is that since we made everything focusable in touch mode, all layouts are. You remember the flag that we added to our constraint layout that said focusable in touch mode? That means that even if I'm in touch mode, I can move from one view to the other in a non-navigational way. Here I'm non-navigating. Like if I were to use the remote, I would need to navigate 1, 2, 3 components to get to category 2. Instead, if I have the mouse, I can jump from clicking to category 2 to move to movie 2, which is the type of interaction that you would expect normally on a touch-enabled UI. Like this is extremely common. This is basic UI implementation when it comes to handheld devices, like to phones or tablets. However, that's not the case when it comes to TV applications, because most of the time developers have went and implemented only the step-by-step navigational UI. Now that we are in a multi-screen world, when your application and your TV application in this case can scale and go from the living room to the car, go from a big non-touchable screen, non-touch enabled screen to a small touch enabled screen, it's even more important to build your UI in a way that it is takes in account both worlds. So I will stop here to talk about our sample application, and I'll stop sharing the screen as well so we can go back to us. But I was wondering if there is any question or comment. I see that there is.
Oh, sorry.
There is one comment, but it's not related to Fire TV. So maybe we can discuss it at the end of the presentation because we actually have a lot to talk about when it comes to TV, and then we can jump in more kind of general Q&A, and we will try to address those questions as well. So next up, so let me share again the link to the sample app that we just saw is here, github.com/amazon/FireTV sample touch app. You can just go, you can play with it, you can run it on your Fire TV, run it on your emulator, and it will just work. And you can start playing with it. You can even use it to start building your more, real world application. However, if you already have content and if you want to build a real world scenario application, we might have the solution for you. So Anisha is actually going to talk exactly about that.
Sure. But before I do jump in, I also just wanted to share a link to, like, if you want to learn more about everything that Mario or I covered, we have our documentation on our developer portal.
Yes.
And I'll just post the link in the chat for that.
Thank you,
So there
Anisha,
you
because I
go.
was
No
forgetting.
problem. No
Here we go.
problem. There we go. Perfect. So Fire App Builder is what we wanted to talk about next. And if you haven't heard about Fab, that's what we call it, Fire App Builder short form. What it is a sample application, as Mario said, that lets you, take all the really interesting aspects that Amazon offers, such as like in-app purchasing, log in with Amazon, and it puts it all together into a GitHub repository where you can then just download it and get started, connect your feed, and do all the really cool things that we have to offer. But I want to go into a little bit more of the technicalities. So let me just share my screen. Can everybody see that? All good?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Um, so yeah, as I said, Fire App Builder is a Java-based framework that you can easily use to build your streaming apps. It lets you build these really engaging, high-quality media experiences, following our best practices and techniques, without you having to go and develop all the code yourself. Um, so what does the Fire App Builder look like? So this is just a little clip of what Fire App Builder looks like. But if you were to go and download the GitHub repository and run it on your Fire TV or emulator, you can interact with it. This is just sample content, but this is what you get out of the box. You can then, customize it, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do those customizations. But this is what it looks like out of the box. Cool. So, what is really amazing about Fab is you can create an app in less than an hour. And I've actually downloaded it and run it, and it takes way less than an hour if you're not customizing anything. So, once you've set up the source code from GitHub, you can set up some configuration files to specify how your feed is set up, and then customize the UI with your specific branding. If you want to extend functionality beyond that, you can add existing modules into the app to advance features. And these include different things like advertising, analytics, login, and purchase options. You can also write your own Java code and integrate it into the framework, and this can be used to customize the look and feel and add custom metrics for custom advertising. So really, you can just extend that Java source however you feel like. The app will be built, and once you build it up, will be supported by the whole Amazon Fire TV audience. The whole Amazon Fire TV series, giving you a really large audience for your app. Sorry, I seem to have lost the slides. So another key advantage of Fire App Builder is the modular architecture that it's created with. So this little diagram here shows you the different types of modules that you can plug and play into Fire App Builder. And the advantage of this is that you can enable the modules that you need for the features that you want. So if you want custom features or something that isn't supported yet, you can use the existing defined interface to write the code that only you need and leverage the rest of the framework. For example, if you want custom advertising, you can write a module to the existing interface, and your code will be called at the right time to display ads. So you don't need to write as much code as if you were to start like from an empty repository. Like, you have the framework, the basic building blocks at your hand. So what are the steps to, going and customizing the app? So firstly, you want to start by configuring the feed. And in order to configure the feed, what we have is a configuration called recipes. And these of your content and categories in the feed so that Fire App Builder can understand them and pass them. Next, you want to configure your UI elements, so fonts, colors, logos, and enable any of those modules like advertising or login with Amazon that I talked about. And these modules are configured by adding them in Gradle. And finally, you build the code that you configured in Android Studios, and that's it. You're on your way to launching your app. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look into each of those steps that I talked about. So the first being creating your feed. And on screen is an example of content to show you what like a typical media feed would look like with your media ID, titles, images, etc. And Fire Builder is able to pass feeds that are JSON or MRSS XML based. So the next step is to give Fire Builder a way to understand your unique feed. So with Fire Builder, this is easy as it provides a JSON file called the recipe, again, which is shown on screen. And this allows you to map the content of your feed to content that Fire Builder can display. And what's in red just shows you how to map what's in your feed to what's in blue, which is the parameters that Fire Builder can pass, allowing you to display that content. So again, as mentioned, Fire Builder is built as a plug and play template. So you can easily swap components to customize your app's functionality. For example, if you have like a Facebook authentication component in your Gradle, like you can see here, you can swap it out for your login with Amazon component really easily by just changing this one line of code. And once you've activated the login with Amazon component by setting verified screen access to be true, which is what you have to do to make sure that you are enabling verification, this is what your customer would see. So as you can see, like with just 2 lines of code, you can swap out Facebook auth for like Amazon auth with like very minimal effort, allowing your customers or viewers to just log in with one click of a button. So this is again what they would see. And last, I just want to talk about customizing the look and feel. So another way you can customize your look and feel is using the different layout options that Fire Builder comes inbuilt with. And currently there are 2 options or templates for you to pick from. And this is not to say you can't write your own or modify these if you desire. And the first template is what you see here on screen, and this is the default. And if you were to, run the GitHub repository and run your emulator or connect it to your Fire TV, this is what you would see. So the first template, again, is what you see by default. It gives you rows of content with a larger image below. And in the config files, you'll see this called as content browse activity. So if you were to change this in your config files, you would get a second option of a layout if you were to set it to full content browse activity. And this gives you more of that tiled display where you can show multiple rows of content at once. If you want this option, it's like usually if you want your user to immediately see more content options at once, then you can choose this option. But again, you can customize this as you like. So really, this was a real whirlwind into just like a glimpse of what Fire App has to offer. So, I mean, Mario's put the link on screen, but check out the documentation. We have it on a link on screen, and I'll let Mario add it to the chat as well.
Yes, let me do that in a second. And here we go. It should be in the comments appearing right now. So everyone has the link and should be able to see it. So I will now, because Anisha did a great presentation of Fire Builder. I think, that was amazing in like 3-4 minutes where it went through all the key features. But I actually want to show it to you live, what it looks like, and kind of give you a teaser of this template, which is, like Anisha said, is very powerful. You can customize and swap in a lot of different features. And again, also it's open source, so you can contribute to it. We actually had a lot of community contribution into Fab already over the last few months. We had, we accept pull requests. If you have ideas on how to improve the template, please let us know. But I want to jump into Android Studio, show you, again, some of the components of what we saw. Before I show Android Studio, I will actually show what a feed of content will look like. So actually, I will show you the basic feed of content that Fire Builder uses by default, which is a JSON file. So let me actually share my screen. Let me share the right tab, and here we go. Don't get scared by this. It's actually quite a lot to take in. But as you can see here, this is just a normal JSON file that contains basically all the metadata for for some content. There is, the title of a movie. There is the description of the content. There is the duration. There is the link to the thumbnail image and so on. So literally, this is a JSON of a media feed. Literally, it contains all the information that the application itself needs to display. So FireSide takes this information and, like Anisha said, automatically populates the interface with this component. So let me switch to Android Studio, and I will go into full screen mode again. Let me share again the screen, and here we go. You should be able to see my screen right now. Yes, as you can see, this is there is one file in the project. This is again another Android project, which is under assets, and it's called URL file. URL file literally contains the URL of the feed. So this is the link that we just opened in Chrome, and this is the link that contains the actual video feed. So this is the information coming in. As Anisha said, FireSide is based on on specific configuration files, which makes your life easy as a developer, which are called recipes. So the recipes are nothing else that technically JSON files that itself define what is the content that is displayed by FireSide. So like Anisha saw in the slide, as you can see here, there is a component of the content is called Lightcast content recipe. This is the basic recipe that is used by FireSide when you run it out of the box. And this is the most important component of this recipe, which is called the match list, which defines how your descriptors in your feed connect to the descriptors that FireSide is capable of understanding. So in this case, if you're in your feed, the one that we just saw in Chrome had title as the title of the clip that needs to be played, FireSide calls that mtitle. So it's just as easy as putting title at mtitle, and automatically FireSide will know where to go and fetch the title from. Same thing for the unique ID of the video, the description, the video URL, and so on. There are actually quite a lot of customizable component in the match list. So, and then it's just as easy as running FireSide, and this is actually what it will look like. Let me stop sharing Android Studio, and I will go and share the emulator actually again.
So what you will see,
yes.
Oh, we've got a good question. So someone's asking, where do you suggest we host our content?
Great question. So the easy answer to that would be, of course, on AWS. But the truth is that it doesn't matter where you host your content. Like you can have your videos in an S3 bucket and generate your JSON feed using AWS Lambda, or you can use any other cloud service. What it matters is that you are able to expose your media feed in form of a JSON file or an XML file or a media RSS feed, and to plug that media content into FireSide to expose that. There are also in the documentation there are ways to also do this in a tokenized way, so it's also protected. Right now, like the basic version uses just a plain public URL that is connected to FireSide. You can do that in a safe way as well, but it doesn't matter where you're hosting your content. It's important that you are exposing the feed and connecting it to the Fire App Builder. And the beauty of this is that it doesn't even matter how you build your feed, because it doesn't matter if you call the title of the video title, or you just call it my title or M title or token title. It doesn't matter, because using the recipe that we just seen, you would connect like my best title at M title in the recipe, and magically Fire Builder will load the content. This is how easy it is to showcase the content. But great question. Let me jump into it and show what it looks like. So here it is, again, the emulator. Hopefully you can see it. And as you can see, it already loaded immediately. And all the data that you see here, the name of the video, the description of the video, all of this is dynamically generated. It's populated into the UI by the feed. It's just fetching the feed and populating the interface. And as you can see, all the components are already populated. If I click on this, like the image goes into this beautiful splash image in the back. There is the description here as well. And I can, start playing the content as well. And all these components are already defined for you. You can move to the next video as well. And it knows automatically what is the next video to play. All of this is taken care of and is already available for you. And the cool thing is that it also does things like resume playback, and it tells you the time remaining. And if we were to go back to the other videos that we played, it will also do that as well. And also, it adds, by default, by fetching all the information from your media feed, it allows you to do very complicated things like search, for example. I can go and search and say, let's say, Lucas, which was one of the videos contained the word Lucas, and I can just go in it and I can start playing. And you know what? It also remembered that I was already watching this video, so you can go and resume play. So a lot of the most difficult implementation when it comes to a media app is already taken care of automatically by Fire App Builder. And last but not least, I wanted to show you how easy it is to customize it. So let me go back to Android Studio, and I will show you how you can change the UI, changing 4 characters in a text file. So let me jump back into Android Studio. You should be able to see it on the screen. Great. So now I go into a different file, which is called the Navigator. Navigator is one of the main configuration files in the Fire App Builder template, as allows you to customize a lot of the look and feel. Like you can change the font straight from here if you want. But you remember that Anisha showed you in the presentation that if you change from content browse activity to full content browse activity, the UI changes as well. So let me do that. Let me change content browse activity to full content browse activity. And then I will stop the application and I will rerun the application. It might take a bit to compile. But as soon as it launches, you will see that as I just changed one line of code, actually, let me stop sharing Android Studio and I will jump back into the emulator. Here we go. As you can see already, just by changing those 4 characters, going from content browse activity to full content browse activity, the UI has changed completely, and it went into this, like Anisha said, this grid style view, which is very similar to the UI that we showcased in the previous sample as well. However, all the content in here is already is the same. As you can see here, it's the same application. It retained and cached the user behavior, and you can go and resume play. So you could potentially even allow your users to move from one UI to the other if they like, if they want to, and the application will still run. And the beauty of this is that, like Anisha said, this is a modular component. This is a modular template. So you can take every module, make it your own, customize it, and turn your app into something very unique. It gives you an enormous amount of freedom, and also it's open source. You can just go and grab it and customize it. So without further ado, I'll stop sharing this, and I will share again the link to the Fire App Builder here on the on screen, and let me also post it in the chat. So as you can see, Fire App Builder is very powerful. I love Fire App Builder. Is one of my favorite projects, and also our team is responsible for this project specifically. So if you have any tips or any advice on how to make it better, it will literally be my team, Anisha, and of course the rest of our team working directly on Fire App Builder. So we can take your learnings at heart and change and customize it and add more features potentially. Let's see now. I don't know, Anisha, if you want to add anything. Sorry.
No, I was going to say
monopolize the conversation.
We've got some really good questions. And in fact, that's a really good segue into kind of the end of this Twitch session.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the questions is, can you talk a bit more about payments? And in fact, next session, we will be talking only about payments. We will be talking about the new Appstore SDK and how we can use that for in-app purchases. So make sure you guys tune in next week for a lot of information on how you can do membership, subscriptions, and all the really cool features that in-app purchasing from Amazon brings to the table.
Great. And there is a question on where you can reach us. I love this question. When reach you guys as well, if it's cool. So first of all, yes, you can reach out to us. Here's our Twitter handle, so you can ping us. Also, let me add the top banner again, which I removed because we're going into live coding. So if you pick these ones up here, you can follow us on Twitter, on YouTube. You can send us a DM. We can jump on it and try to, answer your questions. So I think that's the easiest and fastest way to reach us. Also, you can go on the on our developer blog and look for news there. You can subscribe to the newsletter on developer.amazon.com. Let me actually put that on the screen. And there is a lot of new information coming there as well. Blog. Here we go. Voila. If you go on this link, you will find everything you need, and developer.amazon.com as well has a lot of additional information, like not just about Appstore, about Alexa, about AWS. You can get everything you need. There were other questions as well. There was a question about integrating payments again and subscription. Just tune in next week. You will find out everything about payments and subscriptions particularly. There is an interesting question from Perfect Plane Spotter. Love the name. How do I update my app on the Amazon App Store? Love the question. Very easy. You just need to have a new version of your application, and you go on the developer portal, developer.amazon.com, log in with your Amazon account credentials. You need to be, of course, registered as a developer, or if you're asking about updating, I assume you already have an app. And then you just search for the existing version of your app, and there is a feature to upload the new version, and you just submit it, and it goes through our quick review process and then is released to all customers. So that is fairly in a few words how it works. If you need more documentation, go on developer.amazon.com, and there is all the documentation that you need on updating your app. Great. Let's see. Is there any other question that we haven't touched on?
I think it looks good. I have been monitoring the chat.
Yeah. Great. All right. I think there was actually a question from Mexico. I can't publish apps because a payment method is required and they don't accept mine. Good question. I think the best way for that is to go to to developer.amazon.com and go to the contact us feature, and there is a dedicated team that might help you troubleshoot this problem. I think it's probably the easiest way to get an answer to this, because I specifically don't know the answer to that one directly. Great. Is there any other question before we break? Oh, actually, let me show what are we going to talk about next time, because this is very important. So in-app purchase and the new Appstore SDK, probably Anisha will guide us through everything because she's the Appstore SDK expert. So I don't know if you want to share maybe a little bit of a teaser there.
Yeah, so with the new Appstore SDK, we've got some new ways for you to look at how you'd implement digital rights management within your application, so DRM. However, we will talk about in-app purchasing in further detail, but with the new Appstore SDK, it's the exact same way of implementing in-app purchasing. Like, nothing's really changing. Your app will work out of the box, but we want to go into more details into what that out of the box means. So exciting stuff to come next week. And we can answer more of the questions that might be surrounding how to integrate membership, subscriptions, maybe like upgrades in your game. We'll go into more of this next week.
Wonderful. I'm already excited. Thank you, Anisha. Brilliant. So I would say that with that, we can conclude the stream. We actually went over for a few minutes. So thank you for everyone for stay tuned. And again, please like and subscribe subscribe to our channel here on Twitch, or if you're following us on YouTube, make sure that if you click follow, you will get reminded when we go live, which will be every Tuesday, 6 p.m. GMT, 10 a.m. PST. We'll be here talking about the next big thing at Amazon. So Anisha, as usual, thank you very much. You've been a wonderful co-host as every week. And I will speak with you probably tomorrow or later today. And thank you guys for watching us.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.